So it's 6. I'm calling the meeting to order. Okay. Actually, Brian, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I'd be delighted, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Please stand.
Everybody standing? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job.
Thanks.
We gotta do this more often.
Thursday morning.
So I will do a brief right to know meeting checklist. As chair of the Plymouth Selectboard due to COVID-19 coronavirus, and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. And please note that, what's that? Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether anyone is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know. So, therefore, we've got Zach.
I am here and all alone.
Neil.
I'm here, and there's nobody in the room with me.
Want pizza?
Okay, John.
I'm here and my wife is in the kitchen next to me, so I've got the headset on, so I don't think she can hear anything.
Mary Ann.
All by myself.
Okay, and Bill is all by myself. All right. So therefore, the first order of business. Oh, never mind. I thought they were in already. Oh well. Sandra and Tim. So the first order of business is to review the May 26th work session meeting minutes, which we have in our packets. And is there a motion?
I make a motion we accept the meeting minutes from May 26th.
Is there a second? Mary Ann?
Second.
Who's second? Oh, okay. Mary Ann moved, Zach seconded. What's your vote, Zach?
Aye.
Neil?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
John, you were not at the meeting.
Right.
Bill? Aye. The meeting minutes pass. Second order of business is the regular meeting minutes, May 26, 2020. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from May 26th from the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, Mary Ann moves and Neil seconds. Zach, what's your vote?
Aye.
Neil?
Aye.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
John was not at that meeting. Bill, aye. The minutes pass. Oh, any discussion? Oh, well. So announcements. The select board will meet on the following dates. We'll have a regular meeting 6 p.m. Monday, June 22nd, also July 13th and July 27th, 2020. Work sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. And all the above meetings will be held in the town hall unless otherwise posted. And citizens wishing to be listed on the select board's agenda should notify the town hall before 12 p.m. the Friday before the scheduled meeting. Okay, next. Well, anyway, there are people in the community that survive. Oh, fuck. Oh, well. Sorry. Anyway, I'd like to announce the untimely passing of Chris Buckley on June 4th. And in honor of Chris and also Chris's volunteerism on Plymouth boards, both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, we developed this crystal designed remembrance for him and his family. And it states, with our greatest appreciation, Christopher Buckley, in honor of your dedication and years of service while serving as a member of the Conservation Commission from 2014 to 2020, and also while serving as a member of the Plymouth Selectboard, on the Planning Board, excuse me, from 2016 to 2020. And it's presented by the Select Board members, William Bolton, Marianne Barnsley, John Randlett, Zach Terrell, and Neil McIver. And it's dated June 8th, 2020, Town of Plymouth. So we will arrange to bring this to the family, and hopefully it'll be myself, Rebecca, and Lisa Donor, and we'll probably target maybe the end of not this week. Yeah, perhaps the end of this week. We'll make arrangements to see if we can get this to the family. Okay, next order of business. Anyway, does anyone have any comments on that from the board? Or
I'd just like to say that I really liked Chris. He had so much energy and enthusiasm, and he was so dedicated and focused. And I really feel this is a huge loss.
And I'll say the same thing, serving with Chris on the planning board and through the select board. He was always ready to step up, and he cared very much for the community.
Hi, Jen. I didn't see you there. I'm glad you made it to our meeting. And I guess you know that we're very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. And I was able to tell Chris that he was going to be honored for the Conservation Commission, I think, through the Buckley Memorial Preserve that
Right.
had mentioned. I don't know if this is the same thing.
No, that will actually be under new business. So we're going to be discussing that as well.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that I know that he was just so honored to hear about these things, and it's just a beautiful remembrance. And thank you.
Pick it up.
Yeah,
Pick it up.
Well, pick
Thanks, Jen.
Just stand up and hold it by the camera. If you can see, you can't really see through it, but
about the black, put the black back on you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you see it?
Plymouth was Plymouth was his home for his entire adult life, and it was hard to get him to leave it, even just to travel on vacation. So that's very touching, and thank you all so much.
Thanks, Jen.
Sorry, Jim.
So now to come back to earth very quickly. Steve LaFave, the next order of business is you would like to purchase a Tritech software system from IMC Software. Want to describe what it is?
Sorry about that. It's not actually a purchase. It's the renewal of the licensing for the software we already have.
Okay.
And it's for not to be paid until after July 1st. It's for the next budget coming up, but it's due like right on the 1st of July. That's why when we always do it this year, I ask the board, and the paperwork is, I don't know who has the purchase order right now, but it does state to be paid after July 1st on it. It is our police reporting software, the dispatching software, and the cruiser computer software is all rolled into that.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Is there a competitive bidding process for this?
The majority of the state has the software, and even if we were to move to another software at this point in time, it would probably cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we are integrated with the main hub from IMC, which is housed in Nashua, so we can get everybody's records through there, plus the Grafton County, plus all the agencies we dispatch for already. They have computers in their cruisers, and they have to be linked to us. So we all have to have the same software to be able to share information and work out of our dispatch.
Thank you.
She climbed 4,000 footers today.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you. Any other discussion on the renewal of the license? Well, in that case,
Is this, oh, sorry, Bill. Steve, is this any different in terms of renewal price than prior years?
Oof. I don't know the answer to that question, because I don't remember what the purchase order was last year. Typically, there is a little bit of an increase. I don't think it was much. It's usually no more than 3%, if I remember right. But I don't have the exact numbers. I could get you the exact numbers. I just don't have them with me at home right now.
Along the same lines, do we have a long-term contract with them that locks them into a certain amount of increase year over year?
I think if we read, and Bill, do you have a copy of the invoice with you and everything else like that? May state that right off.
I don't see it on the invoice, but
Okay. And I would say a long-term contract, no, because we could pull out at any given time, and we would not be penalized for that.
Yeah, just no.
Have we ever owned a 2003 Volvo? Have we ever owned a 2003 Volvo? Oh, yeah. I think we're on mute, right? Oh God, we're on mute. I thought I was on mute.
Nope. Hey, now you are. All right, so any other questions regarding this invoice?
From the website.
Okay. All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the purchase order for TriTech Software Systems for $15,508.75.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, John moves, Neil seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, Zach, your vote.
aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bill, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay. Next order of business, Larry Gibson. You have MB Tractor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a contract here for MB Tractor and Equipment for a walk-behind X-Mark mower, 48-inch deck. This was approved at the March 2020 town meeting, and it's to be paid out of the bond. The total is $6,773. We actually budgeted $8,000 for this piece of equipment, so we are under budget by a little over $1,200. And this is going to replace the 2005 X-Mark mower that we have.
Wow.
Okay.
This piece of machinery.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you expect this one to last 15 years?
I would hope so. I mean, the maintenance guys do a great job on maintaining all our equipment, and we average probably 300 hours a season on the mowers.
Wow. What type of motor? Do you know what it has for motor?
It's a 19 horsepower.
Probably a Kohler, maybe? Or
I don't know, no.
I might tell you it might be on the invoice, but I don't see it. So anyway, any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the invoice for $6,773 for a walk behind mower.
Okay, Zach moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, John seconds. Zach, you vote? Okay, Neil,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Bill, aye. Thanks, Larry.
Okay, thank you.
And good job coming in under budget.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a rebate in that as well, so that was good. Okay, the next order of business is Lisa Donor, Rebecca Hansen, and unfortunately, I think Mike is no longer with us. He was earlier, but Mike McGinley was on to dedicate the naming of the Clay Brook Conservation Parcel. Does someone wish to take the lead of?
I will introduce the idea, I guess, to everyone that's here. Chris has been on the Conservation Commission for 6 years. He joined in 2014 and almost immediately brought a change to our ability to do what we wanted to do, to think bigger thoughts, and he brought a lot of new vision to the Conservation Commission's concept of what we did. And he really moved forward. A lot of the things that are happening now were the result of initiatives that Chris brought to us or supported strongly and allowed it to happen. And that includes the preservation of the area around Clay Brook, which is valued as a, I forget the term, high value wildlife habitat along its entire length from where it joins the Baker River all the way up to Plymouth Mountain. So we thought it would be appropriate to name this parcel of land that Mike McGinley has donated after Chris. We wanted to make sure that it was okay with the family and that Chris had a chance to know about it. So I'm really, really pleased that Jen said that she was able to communicate that to him and that he felt appreciated for the work that he's done with us. So the idea we had was, we actually didn't come up with a name. We just wanted to make sure that that parcel, which is an unnamed parcel at this point other than a lot number, recognized Chris and his efforts towards conservation of that land and that type of land.
Good. Rebecca, do you have anything to offer?
Yeah, so I've served with Chris on both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board for a number of years. And over the years on both boards and most recently on the Planning Board, I've been just pleased to work with him and really working to protect and conserve open space in the town of Plymouth, and seen that happen through a lot of different ways, through implementing the creating and implementing the master plan, working on implementing our zoning ordinance. And just as we deliberated through various applications that came before the Planning Board, just making sure we're being fair to applicants, but also maintaining that rural character that Plymouth has, and that conservation ethic that seems pervasive throughout the town as well. So I think that's just been some important marks that he's left on the town. And should note that most Planning Board members are also appreciative of his long-standing, unwavering consistency in making the motion to adjourn each evening. So that's been an important contribution as well, because who knows how long those meetings would have lasted otherwise. So, so a couple of weeks ago, the board did take a unanimous vote, or made a unanimous vote to honor Chris in his service to Plymouth, his dedication to conservation, in naming this newly conserved parcel in his memory. So.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, I just got a text from, Mike McGinley. He's dealing with a family matter, but he said he tried to get on a few. He may or may not make it, but I know he, really liked Chris and was very pleased to do this. So that was pretty unique because Mike's kind of a gruff guy, and I'm not saying it's hard to get along with, but he's definitely, I guess, opinionated, and it was pretty unique. I think that Chris had that relationship with him. So.
In spite of all that, Mr. Chair, I think the idea for the naming did come from Mr. McGinley.
So that says a lot.
That was my impression. I don't know if that was Brian that just said that, but
Yeah, that was me, Jim.
Brian. And I know when I spoke to Chris about it, he definitely wanted to thank Mike. He wanted me to thank Mike personally. So I know that he felt it was important to work well with him, and he was very good at being diplomatic in certain circumstances. So I think that's definitely something that I would love to convey to Mike personally or Chris.
Yeah, that ability for Chris to be diplomatic with all sectors of our community was something that I didn't know about him until it kind of came to the test. And then I kept discovering these new abilities that he had. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't alone in being very surprised to discover that he had an agreeable working relationship with Mike McGinley, compared to most of the rest of us who felt that, a lot of the things that were happening with the wetlands there were very disturbing to the idea of conservation. But Chris's relationship with Mike McGinley changed the way I think we all worked together, and it opened up an ability for myself to be conversational and chatting with Mike. I see he's been able to join us, and it made a big difference in how these parcels and that land and other land also was being discussed between the Conservation Commission and the town. And that was an important change, I think. And that was all on Chris, because he was very adaptive and open-minded and diplomatic and willing to engage in conversation.
I think that was his unwavering commitment to conserving as much, wild land as he possibly could. So that was the agenda, and it was all for good. So he was adept at making that happen by working with anyone that he needed to. I just received a message from Larry Spencer saying that another area in Plymouth that Chris really worked on for a very long time to help conserve was the Oxbow area. And Larry also worked with him on that and mentioned that he thinks that they have received quite a sum of money in a grant form to help conserve that property. So that's also amazing. So he's had quite an impact on the town of Plymouth.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that we've been invited to apply for a grant for $800,000 to acquire the land around the Oxbow and in that area, but we don't have it yet. So
okay, all right, I understood. I apologize, but still, that's amazing. I mean, that's
huge. Yeah,
that's great.
And Mike, did you want to say anything?
Mike's mic is muted.
That's true. I suppose I could unmute him, but maybe he doesn't really want to.
Do you need a motion, Bill?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we dedicate Claybrook Conservation Area, our parcel in the name of Chris Buckley.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
I'll
Neil
second
moved.
that.
John seconded. Zach, what's your vote? Ooh, it looked like aye, but I'm like,
I was muted. Sorry, it's I.
right. Neil,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Bill, aye. Very good. Well, thank you all, and I'm looking forward to that being renamed. Well, actually, I'm looking forward to being open. All right. Well, so our next order of business, we have Jim Gallagher from NHDES to discuss the Baker River Site Supplemental Plan Environmental Assessment approval. So, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jim Gallagher. I'm the chief of the Dam Bureau for the Department of Environmental Services, and we own 113 dams around the state, including the flood control dams in the Baker River watershed. Those dams were built by what was then the Soil Conservation Service, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That agency now is the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they were built in accordance with a watershed plan that was developed for the watershed back in the 60s. My predecessor agency was the New Hampshire Water Resources Board. It did form into DES along with other agencies. We were a signatory to the watershed plan. The town of Plymouth was, because the town of Plymouth was a local sponsor. They were going to build, they were going to be responsible for the operation and maintenance of one of the dams. It was going to be called Site 12, and build a recreation area or maintain the recreation area in that site. That site never did get built. Only 13, there were 13 projects proposed in the watershed, only 6 got built. Other sponsors included what is now the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. It was DRED at the time, and Fish and Game Department was another sponsor. So, and the Grafton County Conservation District. So there are 5 sponsors to this watershed plan. And when that watershed plan got approved, then the construction of some of these projects got started. The Baker 8 project was built in 1968. That dam. It's a flood control dam. It works fine. It's in Dorchester, but the dam, it was designed based on standards at the time, and those standards have changed. Largely have changed because of the increased precipitation that we experienced since that dam was built. That dam was built based on hydrologic analysis, based on data, rainfall data from about the 1920s to the 1950s. And since then, we've had a longer period of record of rainfall. And because of that, now rainfall estimates for what is called a 100-year flood or even a 500-year flood, that rainfall is higher than it was when that dam was designed. So the dam does not meet current federal standards for spillway discharge capacity. And the dam has an earthen spillway. And NRCS built tens of thousands of these similar dams across the country. At one time in the 60s, 70s, they were bringing online 2 or 3 of these dams a day. And their experience with these dams indicate when those spillways flow at a certain depth, because they are earthen, they can erode and erode back to the dam itself and could cause failure. So it does not meet spillway discharge capacity, and it has a spillway that could erode during certain flood events. We are fortunate that NRCS, the federal government, has a rehabilitation program for dams that they built back earlier that do no longer meet dam safety standards. And with that program, we've been able to assess all the dams in the Baker River watershed. This one was the worst in terms of not meeting federal standards. So we're trying to get the funding from NRCS to rehabilitate the dam. As part of that process, we have to supplement the watershed plan that was developed back in the 60s, and we have to have all the same sponsors sign off on that supplemental watershed plan. And that's what the draft plan was not presented to the town, but certainly sent to the town. The final plan is what we were hoping to get your signature on tonight, or based on, your approval tonight. For us to move forward with the rehabilitation of that dam, that supplemental watershed plan has to be filed with the NRCS. And the NRCS has about $880,000 that they're ready to send to us for the design of this rehabilitation. The plan itself, if you look through it, has conceptual designs, looked at different alternatives how to meet these standards, and came up with a solution which lowers the spillway crest a little bit, but also armors it. And when I say armors it, what we're going to be replacing it with is actually a reinforced roller compacted concrete spillway that can take the flows without eroding. And the analysis that was done in part of the supplemental watershed plan also indicated that when we looked at soils data from the time of construction, there is some concern that the soils may not be fully stable during an earthquake event, the design earthquake event. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case when we really get into design and do some subsurface investigation and see really what those soils are. But the conceptual design includes the cost of remediating those soils, of stability berms on the upstream and downstream, and then grouting the foundation. And so the cost is about $15 million. The state has to come up with 35% of the cost, and the federal government will pay 65% of the cost. But again, we'll find out what the final costs are after this project is designed. So the plan, again, has the conceptual designs, the alternative analysis, and also an assessment of the environmental effects of implementing the plan. And we did try to reach out to the town through the course of the development of this plan with public meetings, had an initial sponsors meeting. I don't think nobody from the town did attend. We didn't get any comments from the town on the draft of the supplemental watershed plan or the environmental assessment. And then of course, forward you the final. And again, coming here to ask for your approval as an original sponsor. If you look at the agreement that you'd be signing on, you'll see that all the obligations of the local sponsor is going to fall on the Department of Environmental Services, coming up with a cost share and match and those sort of things. And then we're really not even obligated to do that. We're only going to be obligated. It's not a funding document. It's only going to be obligated if the federal government comes up with their money. And that does depend from year to year on appropriations, but we did get the appropriation for the design going forward. So I ask the town, the select board, if you would consider approving the watershed plan, and if so, we would need a signatory of the chairman and sort of a attest. The town administrator could attest that that's approval was given whenever it was given by the board. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you. So when is Site 12 going to go into effect? Because it went over my property. And I want a recreational area.
They actually were all deauthorized. All the ones that were not built were deauthorized. And it was back in the 70s when a lot of emphasis was being put on the part of the federal government and restoring salmon into the Merrimack River watershed. And so they looked hard at these dams that hadn't been constructed yet and then deauthorized those. So that's good news for you.
Any questions from the board?
When are you going to do the engineering?
The engineer, so the hope is, when we can't get the design money until this gets filed. And then, assuming this gets filed with the NRCS within a month here, we're going to be working with the NRCS on the grant agreement, and that money has to be obligated by the end of the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. So we are in the, actually in the, when we get that grant money, then we'll be advertising for an engineering consultant firm and selecting when to do the work, like we did here with the Watershed plan. That was done by an engineering consulting firm.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just was kind of anticipating Lisa Donor making a comment or something, but I don't want to prejudge her. But
I could, except I've been aware of this and have been sort of following these updates as they developed, attending some of the planning meetings and stuff with the Dorchester Town at the Dorchester Town Hall. So I'm kind of aware of all this, and it doesn't sound like there's anything too surprising. So we're glad to see it happen. I've been worried about that dam for a while. It's been on the president's list of impaired features for about 10 years now.
Thank you.
so seeing no other questions from the board, is there a motion to approve the supplemental watershed plan number 2 environmental assessment, and also to make me signatory on the document? Or
So moved.
okay, Zach moved, Neil seconded. Zach, your vote?
Aye.
Neil?
Aye.
Marianne?
Aye. Little trouble there.
John?
Aye.
And Bill, aye. And Tim, you were expecting to walk away with a signed document, or will tomorrow be acceptable, or?
Well, it's fine. In fact, Kathy knows there's a way you can assign it electronically. There's a number of ways you can do it electronically, and she still doesn't, if she doesn't have that any longer, we'll follow up with her on how that gets done. And you can either do it electronically, or if you wanted to do a wet signature, but understanding the difficulties we've all had over the past month and trying to get signatures on things, there's a way of getting that done electronically. So thank you very much for your vote. Thank you so much for letting me participate in the meeting, and thanks, Kathy, for putting me on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Take
Appreciate
care now.
You too. Oh, never mind. Already did that one. So I'm going to switch myself with Zach for the next couple of items. And specifically, I wanted to say a couple of things. I'm on for Black Lives Matter discussion. And I'll be brief. I'll make my comments brief because I think Zach's going to be, discussing things as well. But first of all, I just want to say that I attended a Black Lives Matter rally on Town Common on June 4th, and it was, well, actually, Donna Rhodes estimated it as 80 people. It seemed like more than 80 people that attended, and it was very peaceful and very well behaved. And we had a police presence there, probably like, I don't know, 6 officers, something like that. And there was, virtually nothing done except expression of concerned thoughts. I also want to read a Facebook post that actually Chief LaFave posted. I don't think he'd probably want to read it himself, but to our Plymouth community, most know me as a man of few words. However, I have some thoughts which have been haunting me since the murder of George Floyd. Many people have been asking me to share these thoughts, and I have willingly done so with everyone who has asked. Until now, I have not shared my views publicly, as I wanted to take a calm and thoughtful approach. With that in mind, I feel it is important as a community leader that everyone knows what my views are about this disturbing and very tragic incident. First and foremost, I would like to express my deepest condolences to the Floyd family for their unnecessary loss. As a 26-year veteran of law enforcement, it is extremely difficult for me to put into words the sorrow, anger, and frustration I feel. The actions and inactions by the former Minneapolis police officers have deteriorated the trust of our citizens. It is this very trust in which police officers rely on when protecting and serving our communities. I am sickened by what happened, and the total indifference for human life is reprehensible. The blatant disregard for human empathy, as demonstrated by the former Minneapolis police officers, is contrary to the oath we have sworn to uphold with pride and professionalism. I was recently contacted by Zach Terrell from the Board of Selectmen to confirm the Plymouth Police Department has up-to-date policies, procedures, and training in an effort to hold our officers accountable to the highest degree of integrity and moral standards. I want to reassure our community that the Plymouth Police Department will continue to treat the people we serve with respect, decency, and compassion. We would absolutely never tolerate an abuse of force on anyone in any way whatsoever. As always, I encourage anyone to contact me to share ideas, express concerns, or anything else that will continue good police and community relations. Sincerely, Stephen LaFave, Chief of Police. And it was very well done. I appreciate our chief to make those comments, and I think it was well.
Order, hon.
I'm in a meeting.
Okay. She can't do it. She's in a meeting, so. Yeah. Right, good to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, well, it's
And with that said, I'll turn it over to Zach to begin the discussion of the procedure.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know as I don't have necessarily a ton to discuss either, but as a lot of these events were playing out over the last few weeks here, I did reach out to the chief with a series of questions, mostly about police policies as aligned with a lot of the questions that we're starting to hear asked of police forces across our country. The chief gave me great responses on those. Overall, I don't think it's probably a huge surprise that our police force here is very well managed. We have a very thoughtful, very good chief of police here, who's been doing a great job for a long time. That being said, one of the things that concerned me was that we not be asking the questions, right? That we just assume. The Minneapolis police in particular were one of the police forces in the country that many looked towards as sort of a reference for reform. A lot of reform was coming out of that city over the past 6 years. And obviously the end results there ended up being not as good as many of us would have liked to have seen it from afar. So I do come into this conversation thinking that that maybe we should be doing some preemptive looking at the policies we have in place and comparing those against some of the best recommendations that are coming out of a lot of the thinking that we're seeing nationwide right now. Personally, I'd love to see our police force and our town be on the sort of the front of some of those changes, continuing to have thought towards policies around use of violence, policies around chokeholds, policies around civilian review of instances where violence was used, demilitarization. I think these are some things that we should be having conversations around. That leads me to two questions that I had not previously asked you, Chief, that I will ask. One, is our, and this is mostly my ignorance, is our police force here unionized or not?
Yes, the police is combined with, because they just didn't have the numbers for a union way back when it started. So it's police, fire, and dispatch form one union together.
So any policy changes or any policies that would be implemented would have to go through union contract review?
No.
So those are just, they're set by you in
Correct.
particular?
Yes.
Okay, so that's less paperwork and less complex. So we can continue a dialogue to have conversations. Whether or not you implement anything is an entirely different story. But
absolutely, that doesn't prevent them from contesting some of them. You know, if they feel it violates their union rights. But I got to be honest with you, my whole force is on the same page as me. When I wrote that letter, every single officer I have said, "Chief, I'm proud of you. Thank you."
Yeah, and that's 100% the opinion that I've gotten so far in every conversation we've had. The second question I have, and is not necessarily one that I expect you'll have an answer for, where does the university police fall in this? Have they made a statement? Do we know where they're at? Because they certainly have a presence in our community.
Correct. They haven't made an official statement yet. I can tell you that even talking to their officers, they're on the same page as we are, and working and knowing Steve Temporino, who is the chief over there. And I used to work for Steve Temporino because he was my boss. He was the chief at Plymouth PD prior to me. I would venture to guess he's probably going to agree with everything that I've said thus far.
That's great. Are you up for having some more conversations like the ones we've had by email? Is it appropriate for me to continue to ask you some more questions in the back channel in that way?
I think questions are the only way we're going to get to some solutions. So absolutely.
That sounds great.
Okay, I see Joyce waving her hand. We haven't really kind of, can you wait until we pass this through the board?
Absolutely.
Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question.
Okay.
Does the chief have supervision over other individuals other than police officers and staff? Are there any other people like such as informants that are being compensated or?
We don't have informants that are compensated, I guess. I don't understand.
Okay,
I don't quite fully
that
understand
answers that question. But
yeah.
But you have other people outside of the officers and staff that you are in supervision over.
I guess I'm still not understanding your question. Are you saying that I have supervision over civilians?
Your supervision is limited to the police officers and staff.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John or Mary Ann?
Yes. Bill, you know, I talked to, you know, I knew Chief Raymond and Temporino and Steve LaFave, and, you know, they've been nothing but exemplary. And I mean, as far as questions and integrity, and my wife, I talked to her before because I saw this on the meeting, and she's lived in this town for 75 years, and no incidents of, you know, the police being out of line, and they have a hard job to do, and they've done it with integrity, with honesty, and forthright, and I think they should be commended for it. That's what I have.
All right, thanks. Mary Ann, you have anything to offer? Or?
I just, I was wondering, have you seen anything that you think we should be implementing? Have you know, with all the conversations going on, or do you see any things that we should be doing differently, you know, from your department? Any lessons learned or anything like that?
Is that my question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right now, Yes, there are a few things. We have a bunch of new faces at Plymouth PD. So like I stated when Zach emailed me, yeah, we need to update one of our cultural diversity trainings. We're due for one of those because we have a bunch of new employees. Scheduling that I think is going to be very difficult because I think there are a lot of police departments around the state that are going to want to do that. But at minimum, at least maybe I could find something online temporarily until we had an outstanding training. And the woman, her name is Dottie Morris. She is the I've got to read this because I'll mess it up. Associate Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at Keene State College. She came up to Plymouth a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and gave us some cultural diversity training. But she didn't do it. She just didn't sit down. She made it very interactive and she actually kind of put us in other people's shoes. And I think that's what we need to do. To learn from each other. And I said this to somebody else just today. I think the root of the problem is we need to walk a mile in each other's shoes because we don't know what it's like. You know, I don't know what it's like growing up, you know, to be Black, and a lot of people don't know what it's like to be a police officer. So I think if we talk and walk a mile in each other's shoes, so to speak, I think we can come to some resolutions. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
All right, and we can open it up. Joyce, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks very much. I want to thank the chief very much for his Facebook posting, which I thought was wonderful. And it's what I expected because in the 16 years I've been here, we've had nothing but really good responses from our interactions with the police. And I also have walked in other people's shoes, so I have a real sensitivity to what it's like if you're not, if you don't have the white privilege that I have and that all of us on this board have. I mean, I know that I can walk down any street in Plymouth at any time and feel totally safe, thanks to the policing of the chief and his staff, and also the fact that I'm a white woman over 70 and I'm not a threat to anybody. But I've also done a lot of campaigning in this town. Everybody knows I'm a Democrat, and I've campaigned for Obama and Clinton and everybody else. And I've been up and down these streets in Plymouth, and I know that there's some houses where I have met real resistance to the idea of diversity. And that if I were African-American or Muslim, if I had dreadlocks or didn't fit the norm, I might be considered a suspicious person. So here's my question to the chief. When somebody calls in and says, they call into 911 and they get the dispatcher, and they say there's a suspicious person walking down their street, does the dispatcher ask any questions? It's like, what are they doing? Who are they? You know, or is it just kind of assumed that if you're not a white if you're not an Anglo-Saxon sort of normal looking, I shouldn't say normal, but if you're not like the rest of us, are you suspicious? And that's what worries me. I don't think it's the police department that's the problem. I think there are people in the wider community that just kind of aren't on the same page.
Yes, I mean, I can answer I can't speak for those people. I understand what your concern is, and, you know, do I agree with it? Yeah, could that be happening? Yeah, it absolutely could be. But yes, the dispatchers are trained. I can't speak for the 911 dispatchers because I don't handle 911. When you call 911, you're actually getting somebody in Concord, and then that gets forwarded to my dispatcher. But needless to say, they are trained to ask more questions. Well, what are they doing? What is he or she doing that's suspicious? You know, are they walking down the road with a gun? Are they talking to themselves? Are they lying in the middle of the road? Are they yelling at people? What is it that's so suspicious about the person? That way, because we try and go to every call, and it doesn't matter what the call is. We as police officers want to know as much information as we can. And even if we're not getting it while we're driving there, we have on our radios and we go and we ask the dispatcher several questions. Well, is this happening? Can you get this information? You know, and then we remind the dispatchers to get more information for us prior to getting there. The more information we have, the better educated we are before we even show up to the scene, so we know what we're getting ourselves into.
Gigi? Oh, you're on mute.
Unmute.
I just found it. Yes, I want to talk about the incident that happened to my nephew, Jordan Brown. He lived in this community near us for 15 years, went to high school here, and then went to MIT for his college work. And he and his girlfriend came to visit us, and we hiked Mount Washington, and we had the most wonderful day. And then after dinner, he went outside and walked up and down the street and talked to his mom on the phone. And somebody called the police, and I believe that the person said there's a suspicious person with a lot of black hair, and he had a big afro. And so the police came, and there were, I think there were 3 police officers, and everything was okay. They checked him out and was okay, but he was so traumatized and still is. And he was afraid for his life, having 3 police officers from our town. And I mentioned that to Steve when we met with him afterwards, and Steve was surprised. But there was so much happening to these young African-American men with police that I could certainly understand that he was scared at that moment. And unfortunately, he's still really, really upset about it. And all his 15 wonderful years in Plymouth, he's still hurting about it. And so it wasn't so much, this was happening in the community, and it was one of our neighbors. I don't know who it was, but you know, I don't know what we can do about it, but I think we need to have more education for our people. And as Joyce says, that there's some people still who don't appreciate difference in the community, different people in the community. And it would have been nice if the police had maybe found out, you know, what happened, and maybe just had sent one person. Although Steve said that when there's trouble at the college, they always send more just to make sure they have a backup. But if it had just been one police officer who had questioned him, he might not have been so traumatized and be afraid for his life. I'm just still hurting about it too, because he's hurting. So.
And Gisela, I'm still open to speak with him if he ever wants to call me and we talk about that incident. I will gladly speak with him about that.
Yeah, I wish he would, but you know, I think he's too hurt.
And that's fine. You know, if he's
right,
still
right.
Maybe someday, you know, he can call me. We can talk about it.
Right.
I think that's the only way we're going to get past some of these issues is to talk about them and share each other's perspectives, and then come to some kind of middle ground.
And I'm so happy that this Black Lives Matter happens. And unfortunately, I couldn't go downtown for the demonstration. I was really sorry. And I just talked to his mom, Allison, yesterday. We both cried on the phone. And I'm so optimistic always, but I'm just so hoping that there will be a change in this country about the way we perceive people that are different from us. You know, so anyway, and I really appreciated that we were able to talk to you and to your staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. Good points. And Paul, you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And hi, everyone. And I wanted to somewhat echo Gigi's comments, because I was also in the meeting with the chief. And I thought, Chief, your statement was really great. It moved me I could tell that it was heartfelt. It's rare, as you acknowledged, to see an emotional statement like that from a chief of police, and it really meant a lot to me to read it. And I was also at the vigil on the Common on Saturday, and you were there, and we chatted about it, and I was glad to see you there as well. As you know, the incident with the Brown family was not the first time the Brown family had an experience like that. And I think the fact that Jordan's dad had a even more physical experience with the Plymouth PD when the family was living here added a lot to Jordan's trauma when he was confronted by 3 officers. And I think the fact that he was just walking outside, talking with his mom on the phone at the time, and didn't have his ID on him, you know, led to some other complications. But the thing that struck me in our meeting, Chief, was that we talked about the call, the nature of the call, how the call came in. And I remember that your deputy said that one of the things that was mentioned was that the person had a hoodie on, and that that was part of the description. And I asked you and the deputy whether that triggered any kind of racialization of the incident, and your deputy in particular was surprised at the question and said he didn't understand it. And I was surprised that he didn't understand it, since you know, the hoodie being associated with young Black men and being, you know, a characteristic of what makes them suspicious has been in the culture since Trayvon Martin's death in 2012. And it suggested to me that perhaps the sensitivity training needs to be a little bit more directed about cultural stereotypes and archetypes, and just making people aware of how language, even though it appears to be non-racial, is still racialized and has a greater meaning in the culture. So I would suggest, if as you look into different cultural trainers, that you look for something that's more, you know, specifically targeted to racial stereotypes. I think that would be important. As we look at policies for the police, one thing I've heard in the community is that it's really quite shaming to have the names of people who have been arrested published in the paper and published on the website, and that, you know, since they've been arrested but haven't been convicted and they're presumed to be innocent, it would be better not to publish their names. And I understand that the chief of police in Campton has taken the step of removing those names from the website. And I think in this time when we're really looking at the relationship of police and the community, I think that would be a positive step to take if the police would consider doing that in Plymouth as well. So I just want to thank you, Chief, for being just really in touch with these issues, making your presence known. I thought that it was more than just the letter. It was actually the graphic that you put up on Facebook with the letter, where you said, we see you, we hear you, we stand with you. I thought that was really important for you to say, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, any other discussion on that?
I just want to add something. You know, Plymouth is not your typical small town. It's got a major interstate highway and east-west route. It's got such a large transient population that I think that the job that the police do is compounded and complicated. And I also want to say that I think you have a nice way with people, Steve.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate that.
Well then, so that's it for this discussion. And again, I want to thank the chief for actually participating in this. I think this was very useful. So, and therefore, the next item up for business is accepting a contract for new assessing services from Steve Hamilton of Whitney Consulting Group. And
Did we skip over the airport grant?
Yes.
Good catch, Neil.
Good catch.
It's not even in my, where?
Could be. It's just after Jim Gallagher.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I had a big check mark. That was gone.
Yes.
You don't
All
want
right.
the money, Bill? Show me the money.
Hey, we got the money anyway, right? So we're accepting grant funds in the amount of $20,000 from the State of New Hampshire Aeronautics Division or under the CARES Act grants for the purpose of operation and maintenance of Plymouth Municipal Airport. And yeah, Kathy, do you want to describe more what that is about, or is
I
that?
think I'm going to let Ann describe it.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a grant that funds had come available to the state of New Hampshire, and Colin MacGyver, who is the airport manager, put an application in, and basically over the next 4 years, they are willing to give us $20,000 under this grant for maintenance at the Plymouth Airport. So we cannot buy new equipment, but anything such as mowing, such as salaries of the individual, of Colin himself, cleaning, fuels, basic operations. And we have from January 20th, 2020 to May 24th, 2024 to spend this money. So what I am asking for the board to do is to make a motion to accept or enter into the grant agreement for $20,000 from the State of New Hampshire Aeronautics Division under the CARES Act grant offer for the purpose of operation and maintenance of the Plymouth Municipal Airport. And your second motion is that you would vote to certify that Catherine Lowe is your town manager of the town of Plymouth and is duly authorized according to the town bylaws and laws of the state of New Hampshire to execute and deliver for and on behalf of the municipality any contracts such as this grant. This authority was given during an official meeting of today's meeting. So I just need those two motions made, seconded and passed, and the airport will have $20,000 to work with over the next 4 years.
All right.
Sure, they can.
That's a long motion.
You can do, there's two of them. So the first one is to accept the grant in the amount of $20,000 under the CARES Act grant offer. And this is through the State of New Hampshire Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division.
So move.
Is that the one?
I'll jump in.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go for it. Yeah.
Or does this offset any of the $3,000 that's in the budget from the bond expenditure, or is this not that, because that might be new stuff? Is there any mix there?
Well, the bond funding is something that, let me back up. This operation that we're getting this $20,000 for is really for maintenance. You cannot buy something new with it. It's for mowing, it's for fuel, it's for, you could refurbish the tractor if you needed to. Cannot buy something new. With the bond money, I don't really remember everything he had asked for with the bond, but that you can buy something new with. This grant, you cannot.
Okay, yeah, because I don't have the bond stuff itemized. It just says airport improvements, $3,000. So I wasn't sure if that was, painting a building or.
Some of that, I know the airport improvements under the grant was also to do with, he had some tree clearing that he had to do for his runway, his entrance.
Does tree clearing not count as maintenance?
Maintenance.
Could be.
You have
You
to.
definitely look into it.
Cut back.
But that's another grant as well. We have another grant we're working on there too.
They may need a septic system out there or well.
All right.
It's for maintenance, and it won't last 4
Yeah,
years.
We may get that theoretically with the build out of the classroom, and I guess that's still in the hopper as far as the the pilotless flight. So anyway, let's work on it, either having a motion for this particular grant, and then we can have a discussion.
I think John made a motion.
Ooh, I'm locking up there. Did someone move?
John Rand.
I did. I did, Bill.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Did I recuse myself?
All right, John moved. Who seconded?
Zach.
Yeah, you can. Zach seconded. Any discussion?
Did I recuse myself?
Yeah, yes, you can.
Okay.
I get that. Well, why don't you wait until we actually vote on it? But
All right.
actually, you can recuse yourself from the discussion too. That's correct. So, any discussion besides that? All right. In that case, Zach, what is your vote?
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Bill, aye, and Neil recused himself. All right.
The second motion is for the Board of Selectmen to authorize Catherine Lowe as your town manager to sign any necessary documents related to this grant application.
What about if we do it short and sweet? Motion to appoint town manager Catherine Lowe as signatory for this grant.
Perfect.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a Zach moved? Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds. Zach, what's your vote?
Aye.
Okay. Mary Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
do you also recuse yourself from this one too, Neil, or
Yeah.
you don't have any skin in the game? But and Bill, aye. Ayes have it. Catherine is a signatory. All right. So accept contract for new assessing services. Kathy, you wanna, or Ann? I don't really.
Well, we had Brett Purvis and Associates as our former assessor, and we've had them for 5 years. This is going on 6 years. In the beginning, they started out great, and we started getting some feedback that wasn't, to the best of, to what we expect from them, let's say. So we did look at another company, and we'd like to hire this new company as our new assessor. We did review all the information. The price is basically the same price as what we were getting from Brett Purvis, but I believe that we're going to get better work, more work out of the new company.
Okay. So therefore, is there a motion for the new assessing services from Steve Hamilton of Whitney Consulting Group?
I make a motion, we accept the new contract from Steve Hamilton of Whitney Consulting Group for assessing.
Okay. John moves. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Neil seconds. Zach, what's your vote?
Aye.
Oh, wait.
Or
Any
discussion?
Yeah. Let's discuss this. So,
Kathy, how long is the contract for?
4 years.
That means he'll do 80% of the town.
He'll do 20, he's doing 20% of the town each year, but Brett Purvis and Associates already did the first 20%. So they only have 4 years worth to do 20% of the town each year. And during those years, they're going to do like a kind of a full update every couple of years instead of we may have to have a townwide reval in year 5, but if they are working on an update every other year, then we shouldn't have to go that far or spend that much money to have a full townwide update.
Is there going to be a human in our office majority of the time, or is
One day a week, just like we get them 1 day a week.
Yep. All
Yeah.
right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so
When does this
therefore-
contract start, Kathy?
July 1st.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Susan,
Hey, Bill.
we're kind of like almost wrapping up things right now.
Okay, then.
And
And stay for public comments.
yeah, you could be the public.
I totally missed the Chris Buckley thing.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in another meeting. I just got, Habitat Board of Directors, done with that one, jumped on, thought maybe I'd catch it, but oh well.
Yeah, I did notice that Jen Morris was actually in the meeting, our meeting, until way beyond those items. So it just seemed kind of good. Maybe she can be oh, never mind. In any event, where
Have
are we?
fun. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have anything good left on the agenda?
No. Maybe a motion to adjourn, but we got.
Okay, thanks you guys. Thanks for doing that for Chris. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Susan. We'll see you. All right. So we've got a motion and a second and discussion, and Zach, your vote.
Aye.
Mary Ann. I saw your lips move. John.
Aye.
Sorry.
Neil.
Aye.
And Bill, aye. Ayes have it. So very good. So the last one, motion to approve the 2.5 million note. Oh, so no, that whole thing was done correctly, right? We had a motion and a second, and all those that said aye, right?
You're all set. Yep.
Okay. So a motion to approve the 2.5 million note from Meredith Village Savings Bank at 1.75% interest rate. Bond approved at March 2020 town meeting. Is there any discussion from Ann, perhaps, or?
Awesome.
So this has already been approved at town meeting. The board has already approved us going with Meredith Village Savings Bank at the 1.75%. So I'm just coming back to you for one more vote or a motion to approve it so that we can get everything ready, signed.
Sealed and delivered.
Yeah, sealed, delivered. We will need signatures of the board. You need to come in if you could tomorrow or the next day to get everything signed. That would be great. So this is just the final, documents that we need signed.
So we
And
can
looking for
start
a
getting the
motion.
money.
Yeah.
Right.
You're gonna have department heads, I'm sure, beginning of July, they're gonna be coming
Yep.
with those purchase orders, lining up
Merry
at the door.
Christmas.
Mhm.
All right. So is there a motion to approve the note?
So move.
All right, John moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Zach seconds. Neil, your vote.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Bill, aye. The motion is approved. So that looks like it kind of wraps things up.
Unless you have committee reports.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Chairman's discretion, Mr. Chair.
No, are there any committee reports?
None.
Right. So seeing none, any member of the public have a comment?
They're gone.
All right. In that case, is there a motion?
I move we adjourn.
All right. Neil moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Ooh, there's a tie.
Was a tie.
Make
Gotta
it
give
Mary
to
Ann.
Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
She's been
Zach, your
trying to
vote.
adjourn since the beginning. Just
Okay.
kidding.
Zach says aye. Mary Ann,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Bill, aye. We're adjourned.